Okay, so I've been looking at some stuff that's kind of new for businesses, like serverless and containers, because it's something that I think it really feels a lot of ways like virtualization did like 5-10 years ago.
I mean, the thing that everyone was afraid of?
Yeah, it was that one thing that was like, oh, it's revolutionary, it's going to change the world. And it did great, but it didn't have immediate legs. It had to have some time. And now you don't talk to anyone who doesn't have virtualization, and typically a very big virtualization footprint. In fact, the bare metal machines are the rare ones now.
Oh, agreed. That's actually where I cut my teeth in IT was, hey, let's take a data center and make it virtualized. But you said something about containers and serverless.
Yeah, because as much as virtualization obfuscated the hardware, it feels like container, serverless, whatever language you want to put around it, is obfuscating the operating system. Like you just have this thing doing that. And for me and I'll say it, and it's probably not a bad term, an IT traditionalist, that seems really tough to monitor. And understanding what to look at for all of that is kind of tricky. And it's not just for that, because we collect, I don't know, millions of data points, and actually making sure that we can talk to the business logically is tough, especially when you have something as ephemeral as a container or a serverless service, because you used to be able to walk in a data center and be like, that's the server, that's what we're doing, and now it's not there anymore. So how are you kind of working with that kind of setup?
You know, you touched on a couple of things that excite me a little. One of them being the idea of containers and the virtualization technology that is enabling those containers and serverless. But I'm going to turn your idea onto its head.
Okay.
You need to stop worrying about your technology.
No, that's why I got into IT. I got into IT because I like this stuff. I read the press releases that the new thing is coming out. You know, Widgets and Biscuits is now going to be making this thing. And I'm like, cool, how do I download a copy of it? I'll build up a VM, I'll throw it in there, and I'll play with it. And then I'll be like, cool, we should totally use this for the company.
Great idea.
Yes.
Somebody has to buy it though.
Yeah. But they should just buy it because I like it.
Done. All right.
Okay,
good. When we can leave now. No, That's not going to work, Kevin.
Okay.
What I have learned over the past few years, I think is something about an evolution of my mindset, and that is that what really matters is how my customers perceive the technology that I'm using. So whether we're talking about virtualization or bare metal, whether we're talking about containers, or whether we're talking about serverless, it does not matter what technology I use to provide the service to my customers. And it goes back to that whole idea of IT service management. Mm-hmm. I am delivering a service that my customers are buying from me.
Okay.
The technology that I use, whether we're talking 10 years ago or 20 years ago with bare metal, whether we're talking 5 years ago with virtualization, or today with the myriad of cloud providers and containers and serverless, the technology changes, but the fact is my customers still want the same type of service from me.
But they don't know. They don't know the technology.
That's right.
So why don't I just get what I want?
Because what you want may not always work for the business.
Okay.
You're in business, I'm in business, because we're delivering an effective solution to allow the companies that we work for to sell something to a customer.
Yeah.
We are essential to our businesses being successful. So if the thing you want is a Maserati,
yes,
but the thing you should really buy is a minivan, or in my house we call it the Vanberghini.
Okay, got it.
Then we need to figure that out. Your Maserati is not going to have the same utility as my Vanberghini.
Yes.
Therefore, there's a disconnect here. And the disconnect is, does your Maserati meet the needs of the customer? The answer is probably yes. There's a gap there. The gap is where we, as business-focused IT professionals, where we need to look at and say, what does my customer really want from me as a company? What does it want from me as a business? Mm-hmm. Does it need Maserati speed, or does it need Vanberghini utility?
Okay.
Maybe it is Vanberghini utility.
But maybe they also need speed.
Maybe.
But how do we start this conversation? Because I'm the IT guy. I've always been, and I'm in IT because I love technology. And I loved playing with virtualization early. I loved, trying to kick the tires on containers, though sometimes it kicks me back. And new versions of operating systems, new hardware platforms, all that stuff is fun, and I can see this could help the business. And I want to take that to someone and be like, you should see this is cool. But I'm obviously not talking about the right things, because I'm talking about this is the cool new hotness. We should have the cool new hotness because we deserve the cool new hotness, not because it'll have good business value. But that's my breakdown. I don't know what conversation to have. Even if I know that, this will save us money on our travel budget because we'll put in high def video systems, and the video systems cost, I don't know, $1 million a room, and we've got to have at least 6. I don't know how to find the justification to say we should have this because it will save us money here, here, and here. I just don't know where to begin those conversations.
Yeah, it's an uncomfortable conversation to have if the genesis for your career has really come from a technology perspective. If you are the geek of geeks, and I know that you are.
Yeah,
you are.
We've had that discussion.
We've had the discussion many times. If you are the geek of geeks, then we need to help you understand how to geek out about data.
Okay.
And that really is what we're looking at here, whether it's data that has an traditional IT flair, or whether it's data that comes from the business. I mean, there's not a whole lot of difference between how much revenue per customer is generated and CPU cycles per server. I mean, they're all numbers, they're all rates.
Yeah.
The question is, how do we marry the two together?
Yeah, I mean, how do you, especially with something as ephemeral as virtualization, because it's typically in clusters, it's not tied to a single piece of hardware anymore.
Sure.
It's tied to 4, 5, 6 pieces that are all part of an infrastructure, and they've got data constantly flowing in and out. But the serverless is just as difficult, and cloud solutions, same kind of thing. You don't actually pay for that hardware footprint anymore. So taking the traditional KPIs I'm used to monitoring, CPU, memory, disk space, that kind of stuff, I/O, that's not the same as bringing in the business metrics. But I was hired to be an IT guy, not an MBA.
So I think that Gartner can help us here.
Okay.
I mean, and that's not something I say lightly.
Right.
Gartner has developed a new model. And the model is about algorithmic IT operations. I mean, it used to be called AI Ops. I didn't really like that branding, and I'm glad that Gartner agreed with me.
Okay.
So AI Ops has four main areas, right? We're talking about network performance monitoring, infrastructure monitoring, application monitoring, and something called digital experience.
Okay. And that's this thing you sent me.
That's that thing I sent you. So I think, let's go grab some coffee.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that.
Okay. Sounds good.
I got lost again.
It happens. Building can be confusing.
My brain can be confusing at times.
Frequently.
So, Kevin, we want to talk about the model, right?
Yeah, because I like it. It makes sense. It's a pretty diagram, but how do we actually start working towards that?
Right. So Gartner established this model, and when we get back to the desk, we can take a look at that model. But it starts with network performance monitoring, looks at infrastructure monitoring, adds in your application monitoring, and then focuses on the top at your digital experience or customer monitoring. The idea being that in the center of all of that is this algorithmic view of how your environment is performing. Mm-hmm. I mean, you and I both come from an infrastructure background.
Yeah.
And we understand that CPU and memory and disk utilization, those are all important.
Yep.
Network interface utilization,
absolutely.
All of those, those metrics that are near and dear to our hearts. But I mean, the world is a pretty big place when it comes to data. Okay. And figuring out how you and I are going to navigate that data landscape, and that's a challenge, right?
It's a huge challenge because, I mean, even if we just take those 3 or 4 interface, CPU, memory, and disk, I mean, those are 4 metrics, but they technically have child metrics. Yes. And then you've got that on every single thing you're watching at. You could, if you're talking even the simple things, small, medium-sized business, you're talking tens of thousands of data points like every time it goes through. So that's a lot of data to churn through and understand how to kind of get to the truth.
I like that. So one of my favorite sayings is that there are 3 types of lies in the world.
Okay.
Lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Yes, yes, they are.
Right, and anyone who's tried to monitor CPU utilization without looking at load average understands that when CPU utilization is humming along at 50%, but one of your cores is spiking on load average, you know you have a dreaded single-threaded app. But how do you convey that to the application team? How do you say to them, hey, app team, by the way, this app, whether you developed it or whether you purchased it, it's single-threaded, load average on a single CPU is spiking. Yes, we can keep throwing CPUs at the box.
But it's never going to use more than that one. So if it's using 90% of a single 3 gigahertz and we give it 24 procs, it's going to use 90% of a 3 gigahertz proc.
Right, with the other 19 just sitting there.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the challenge that we're faced with. I kind of think of it like this evolution that we're going through. Whether you want to talk about it in DevOps or SRE, we've got these development teams that are building applications. A lot of times they are instrumenting their own code. They're pushing that code out, whether they're doing it once a year or whether they're doing it once a day or more often.
Or even with some type of CI infrastructure that automatically builds and pushes it out. Yeah.
I mean, CI/CD is the new buzzword bingo entry, and I like it. It makes sense. But we've got these developers who are struggling with speaking with operations, and operations who are like, I'm not a developer.
No, I mean, for me, my career path is different than even my college path. My college path started in CS. I mean, computer science. So that's programming, make sure you do your pesters, make sure you have all that stuff running. And then I decided I didn't want to program for a living. And I liked the information systems management side. So I went back and changed everything. But I know enough about programming, development, if we want to use the term, I know enough about development to just be dangerous. Like, I can't do it, but I could probably read code and help people along, but I need them to explain to me the why. Like, why is this thing this way? Why is it critical? Why do you care about that one data point? What does that tell in a larger arcing story? And understanding that. But I like that with the bringing the data together so we can actually have the conversation.
Yeah, so for me, I like the evolution of DevOps, and I might start a flame war here, I don't know.
It happens.
It's not spaces versus tabs either.
No, we're not getting in that discussion
Not
again.
the discussion. But I like the idea of site reliability engineering. Google released that volume, and there's now an associated workbook that can take you through site reliability engineering and what it means. The challenge is that Google built things for Google scale.
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily build things for the scale of you and I, and that makes sense. How do we take that idea of site reliability engineering, or as I like to think about it, service reliability engineering? I mean, you and I are, in our respective roles, are tasked with keeping a service up and running. Whether that service is, I'm going to deliver mail to your inbox, or whether that is our e-commerce platforms or other customer-facing platforms. We are part of the machine that keeps those running. So as an SRE, my job is to understand what matters to my customers, to understand what matters to the internal organizations, whether we're talking sales and marketing, or whether we're talking to the developers, and how they interpret that data. And then when we get back to the infrastructure teams, what they need to do to progressively support that environment.
Yeah, and for me, the tricky part has been, as an infrastructure guy primarily, and some system stuff, is understanding, I can pull these metrics, I can understand that, but it's not the customer-facing side. That's a different set of metrics. And for me, sometimes for a while, actually, just getting my head around the difference between synthetic versus real user monitoring is difficult as a guy who wants to do the same thing every single time, and that's synthetic. I want to go through, I want to do this, make sure the credit card goes in, next finish, something processes. Great. But that's not necessarily the way people actually do things. That's the trickier part, and actually seeing the real end users who may not be using it the way you want, who may not be doing it correctly, but still getting the metrics that way.
Yeah, I like to tell our application teams, synthetic monitors are the things that will make sure that in the middle of the night, when something goes bump, you know that it goes bump. And we all know that our platforms have peaks and valleys. We know that during the 9 to 5 business hours, the folks in marketing or accounting, they're probably hitting some SAP installation pretty heavily.
Yeah.
But at 11 p.m., they're probably not. So how do we emulate one of those users from finance hitting that SAP installation, or from marketing hitting that SAP install, so that when it fails, because everything fails at
Eventually,
some point.
yes.
We know that it happens. And then the real user is, well, hey, Josh is doing things in a really weird way, and he's complaining because his sessions are slow. And the reason that his sessions are slow is he's in Canada, and it's cold, and the electrons slow down the line,
yes.
right? Because that's the way physics works.
Because speed of light, that's how it works with speed of light.
Well, it's also metric versus,
anyway,
they're totally a thing. So I don't know, Kevin, I think we've got a challenge here, right? We need to establish this clear trajectory for your technology. I mean, I get it. You love your tech.
I want it, and I want the company to say, yes, I will get you a license for that.
So how do we convince people that you deserve the technology that makes you excited? Because I know that Kevin Sparenberg, who's enthusiastic about his technology, you will be a better employee, but you also will be more supportive of those teams that are paying the bills, like the one that you need for your new toys.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe let's head back.
Yeah, that's enough time here.
All right.
Sorry. So wrong. Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Got you. Oh, right.
Did you get lost again?
I did get lost again.
It happens. Building can be confusing.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing. So now that we've got the framework sorted out, we need to talk about how it's going to apply.
Yeah, I mean, it's the transitional part. I mean, I love the things. I think it's great to check those boxes, but what's our end product?
So our end product ends up looking like this amalgamation of tools. This idea that we've really been pushing lately is democratization of data access.
Okay, can you explain that? So what's that look like?
So it looks like it doesn't matter what the back end of your tools are. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about your network data, or you're talking about your application data, or you're talking about your business data. You want to be able to bring all of that data together. Mm-hmm. So when we look at Network Performance Monitor, that is the tool that looks at our infrastructure. And it doesn't matter if I've picked up my entire organization and stuck it into one of the cloud providers. My network is still the thing that is going to provide me with access to my cloud.
Yeah.
So I've got my network data, and I've also got things like my F5 load balancers, whether they're physical or virtual devices, it doesn't matter. I've got a series of, whether we're talking about virtual load balancers or some other clustering technology, maybe we're talking about a Microsoft SQL cluster.
Yeah.
That infrastructure still needs to be monitored. Then we've got the developers over there, and although we love the developers and they say that they love us, it doesn't always work out that way. They've got this dark magic that they've been using for years to expose specific application metrics. We need to bring those application metrics into our environment. Tools like AppOptics, right? It takes, for you and I who come from an infrastructure background, it takes the mystery out of what's going on. I mean, I can't explain to you how .NET works. I can't explain to you how Java works.
Nor do I really want to know sometimes.
It's dark magic.
Yes,
trust me. It's
definitely fine. There's sugar, spice, everything nice, or the flip side of that.
Or the flip side, right? It's true. It's true. So we've been using this idea of a data Sherpa. Mm-hmm. You know what the Sherpas are, right?
Yeah.
They help the mountain climbers, right? The idea that we as IT professionals should become data Sherpas means that for those application engineers, the folks who have been really in their own applications have been developing the monitoring metrics that we might want to have access to. Mm-hmm. Data Sherpas like us will help those application teams expose those metrics. We'll take those pile of metrics and we'll carry them. We might even get them all the way up to that snow line. but we're not going to help those application teams get to the summit.
The next step. That's on them to actually take what you're providing and actually turn it into something actionable or understandable to multiple parties, or?
Yeah, and really they have the context. I don't code at all.
Okay.
And I script really badly.
Yeah.
That is the story of my life. So when someone says, hey Josh, I've got this .NET app,
yay.
Great, good for you. What does it do and what's important? And for me, that's what this framework does, right? It takes that network performance data, the infrastructure data, the application data, and of course, the data that is really important to the business is that digital experience monitoring.
Yeah, but that's kind of that tricky area, because a lot of those, I mean, you're talking about like internal developers who have built this thing, and it's kind of we've used the term before, it's a black box. It's something we don't know what happens inside. But it's funny, a couple of years ago, I was working with Tom, and he showed me like really what DPA does.
Oh yes.
And the fact that, it doesn't have to be a black box. You can actually see inside of it and understand what, the various things are. And it's made me a better, I'm not gonna say developer because I'm not a developer, but it made me a better monitoring person because I understand what some of those things that previously weren't visible to me mean. And for custom applications, especially if you have a dev team on site, that they're writing stuff, understanding that, this call to a database took 300 milliseconds and yesterday it took 2 milliseconds and it's happening 20,000 times an hour, then that kind of stuff adds up. And there's a trick with getting that information and understanding how to, I'm not even gonna say the word massage, because we're not really changing information, it's just how you interpret it and what you then do with that data.
Yeah, so do you remember that excitement that you felt when you used DPA
Yes.
and could suddenly see inside of those databases?
Yeah, when I realized what a wait time statistic was and what it actually meant, yeah.
Right? There was that light bulb moment and you went, oh, I can make that change. That's the same type of enthusiasm we want infrastructure engineers to have about application data and that digital experience data, right? The real user data plus the synthetics data. Those are things that we want you to be excited about. The reverse of that, though, is we want application engineers whose applications are out facing the customers. That's where we're collecting our revenue from. We want them to be equally excited about the infrastructure and network data, because they're all linked together. We're not talking about these biomes that exist in isolation. We're talking about this complex ecosystem.
Yeah.
The end result being, hey, Kevin, you are delivering a service and our customers are paying money. How can you best perform that service? How can you best deliver it so that it's both economically viable, but it's also technologically sustainable? I mean, one of the things I love about the Google platform is that they invested up front to develop a highly scalable infrastructure. When they looked at the problems that they had to solve, they could have solved them very quickly. They could have just slapped a Band-Aid on it, and then another Band-Aid, and eventually you have this undead mummy that is walking around and it appears to be a service.
Yes.
They put the effort in up front to say, well, what's really important for scalability, so that customer 1 experience was the same as customer 1 million experience.
Okay. But a lot of that has to do with planning and going back to the business and explaining what the end goal is. And for a lot of, traditional IT people, and I'll count myself among them, sometimes my end users don't know when things go sideways, but I have to know. And that's kind of we jokingly have said for years that, slow is the new down.
Yes.
And as much as that's true, there's also kind of a gradation there. And we were talking before this, and it was the degrees of down. There is something that's like all the way down, hard down, and then there's like a little slow, impacting, business impacting. But I think this qualifies both for your internal customers, your end users,
Yep.
as well as your outward facing customers. If it's a smooth transition all the way through, then it's something worthwhile.
Would it surprise you to know that if we were to go talk with the CIO and explain how the technology that gets you excited, that it gets you out of bed every morning because you love to play with it, that it was going to help him with his bottom line, that he would be open to that? So instead of you walking in and saying, well, I'm here, I need $1 million, you're going to walk in and say, hey, I know that there's a problem, right? We are we're not turning over enough of our users who are hitting our website. They're not buying.
Yeah.
And we think we can expose why. Here's how we're going to try to solve it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're willing to approach that business problem, I think we can make a pitch.
Yeah, I think she's here today. Let me check to see. She's not busy right now. Can you take a walk with me?
I can take a walk.
Excellent. Okay. So bring your notes.
Let's do it.
I think we want to talk about this.
Sounds good.
Thanks. And she's over this way.